Oh, ladies and gentlemen, everybody in AgGrad Nation, very, very excited today to bring you another career spotlight of somebody doing interesting things in the industry. I think you're really, really going to enjoy this. As you, if you've seen this before, as you probably heard me mention, we're going to do 10 of these interviews in the fall and then another 10 in the spring. And sometime in between there, we're going to also repackage these up as both YouTube videos, so you can catch them there if you don't catch this live, or as a podcast too. So I think this will be a really, really helpful resource for those of you, especially that are still in the career discovery phase, wondering what opportunities exist out there and what those look like on a daily basis. So very, very excited for our guest today. We have Mary Jane Buerkle. Mary Jane is the Director of Communications and Public Affairs. And let me bring her on here to talk to you. There she is. Hey, Mary Jane, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are y'all? Thank you very much.
Why don't you tell everybody you're the Director of Communications and Public Affairs for who?
For Plains Cotton Growers Incorporated, and we are headquartered in Lubbock, Texas.
And you are not in Lubbock, though, as I understand it. Where are you?
I actually, I go to Lubbock one, sometimes 2 days a week. It just kind of depends on what's going on. I actually live in Haskell, Texas, which is about 2 hours east of Lubbock. So it's where I grew up. My husband and I had a unique opportunity to move back home, closer to family, and the opportunity to buy into a business. And so just couldn't pass up that opportunity, but so incredibly blessed and grateful to be able to keep doing what I was doing for Plains Cotton Growers. And being in communications, as I know, a lot of people watching may realize, I mean, there are a lot of opportunities to work remotely. So, and those are becoming more popular. So it's worked so far, so good.
Cool. Well, I definitely want to get into more of the kind of the remote working arrangement, what exactly that looks like, because I know that's a question on a lot of folks' minds. But first, why cotton? Have you just always had this passion for the cotton industry?
I have. I mean, I grew up on a family farm, again, here in this area on the Texas Rolling Plains. And my grandfather grew cotton and peanuts and some grain sorghum and raised some cattle. So a diversified farming operation. And so I just always had this appreciation and love for the cotton industry. And this definitely is my dream job. I mean, it really is, working for this organization, working for such fantastic growers. And I just have always had an interest in agriculture based on my background. So, but of course, going to Lubbock, going to Texas Tech, gave me an even greater appreciation for the cotton industry just because of its significance to that particular area. And so, just very fortunate to be in this job.
And I know you mentioned Texas Tech. If I understand correctly, you didn't start at Texas Tech. So tell us about that, where you started and how you ended up at Tech.
That's right. Not many people know that I did my very first semester out of high school at Oklahoma State University in Stillwater. And it was a wonderful place. It was a lot further from home than what I got, kind of homesick and met some other friends who were also transferring back to Texas Tech. And, whenever I first got out of high school, I thought, well, all my friends are going to Lubbock, and I want to be different. And OSU was a great place. And I actually did not switch majors. That was one of the reasons why I chose Oklahoma State, was because of the strong agricultural communications program that they have. And they are still very, very strong today. And so, it was really just a personal choice for me as far as wanting to be closer to home. But it was a tremendous opportunity to grow once I moved back to Texas Tech and to Lubbock. And that's, as I look back, I realize that that's exactly the way it was supposed to happen, because I have such an appreciation for my time at OSU, but then also for being able to come back home and being able to stay in the same major. I know that, I don't know if the statistic is still the same, but typically people change majors, 6 or 7 times. I was not one of those people. But like I said, OSU, Texas Tech, both very strong agricultural communications programs.
Great. Yeah, I was not that bad either. I changed majors once. I did change from ag ed to crop science and management, but that was the only change I made. So that move from Oklahoma, which Oklahoma's still cotton, there's still cotton up there, but
yes.
Lubbock is really cotton country. That was probably significant for you. Tell us specifically, Plains Cotton Growers, what exactly is the organization?
Well, Plains Cotton Growers is a commodity association. We represent growers in 41 counties in the Texas Panhandle, High Plains and South Plains. If you're familiar with Texas and the Panhandle area, our territory reaches from the top of the Texas Panhandle down to the Permian Basin area, the Midland Odessa area, and pretty much everything west of what's known as the Cap Rock. So on that higher elevation. So In that area, we'll grow about 2/3 of the state's cotton crop, about 1/3 of the nation's crop, and anywhere from 3 to 5% of the world's cotton crop, just depending on the year. So, I mean, it is extremely significant to that area, to that 41 counties. What we do as an association, we handle mainly legislative and regulatory matters, making sure that our producers have the best opportunities that they can to be profitable and to add to their bottom line. And so we stay on the front lines so they can stay in the field, so to speak, and do things on their behalf. We are not a checkoff. I think that's important to point out. We're a voluntary dues organization. We are funded by our member GINs and also agribusinesses and compresses and other members of PCG. But the bulk of those dues come from our member GINs, and it's on a per bale basis. And again, that's voluntary. So we actually, out of all the bales that are produced in the Plains Cotton Growers area, about 90% of those are Plains Cotton Growers GINs. And so that's, I think that's extremely significant to point out as well. So we certainly do have a very high level of support. We do some research and promotion, although I said, we're not a checkoff, but we do some local research and promotion initiatives, and then also, statewide as well. But we partner with a lot of other, partner with the rest of our industry, public and private, whether you're talking about universities or other companies. And so we build relationships. That's really one of the very best things that we do at Plains Cotton Growers. And so we spend a lot of time in Washington, D.C. and in Austin at the state level as well. So just making sure that our growers have effective representation.
Very cool. And a few words there that I want to define for those listeners that or viewers that are not cotton people or farming people. Check off. The big distinction there is that the growers are not required to pay into the program. It's voluntary that they want to support it. Is that right?
For us, yes. We are a voluntary organization. So yes, the GINs choose whether or not they want to pay dues, and also the other members as well. So like I said, the majority of our funding comes from our member GINs, but like I said, we also have agribusinesses and other members as well. So, but that's right. No, we are voluntarily funded.
Okay. And then maybe if you could just give us a very brief sort of basic explanation of the cotton industry for those that aren't from cotton backgrounds. You mentioned GINs, you mentioned bales. Can you tell those of us that are maybe from either a livestock background or a corn, soybeans background, what's all this unique jargon about cotton all about?
Well, it's neat that you bring that up. And one of the neat things about the cotton industry is that after cotton is harvested, which, a lot of people who are watching this may have seen a cotton harvester. If you haven't, please go to our Facebook page. We've got tons of pictures. I can provide whatever pictures you like. But after it's harvested, it actually goes through several processes before it's shipped to its final destination. So in, say, the Lubbock area, for instance, you've got the grower who produces the cotton, and then the harvested cotton goes to the gin, where it's further processed, where the seed is separated from the lent. The lent is, of course, put into cotton bales, which are about 500 pounds apiece. Those are then graded, and there's samples from each bale that are graded. So once the textile mill receives that bale, they know exactly what they're getting quality-wise. So if they say, well, I want this length, this strength, this uniformity, they know exactly what they're getting from the classing office, and that's done through the USDA. So as I said, cotton goes through several processes before it ever makes it to the textile mill, where it will then become your favorite pair of jeans or sheets or towels or whatever. And I also mentioned too, of course, at the gin where the lent's separated from the seed. That's another unique thing about cotton, is that cotton actually produces two co-products, the lent and the seed, that can be marketed completely separately. So you've got the seed that can be crushed into oil for cooking. So if you're thinking about frying your turkey on Thanksgiving, I can tell you that cottonseed oil is a great choice because it has a high smoke point, and it's good for frying a turkey. But also it can be used for livestock feed, and cotton is in a lot of the things that we use every day, all the way down. I say all the way down, all the way to our money. When you exchange that paper bill, it's not really paper at all. It's 75% cotton and 25% linen. So cotton really is in so many of the things that we do, even outside of what we wear and may use on a daily basis, that we think about cotton. So it certainly is, as I said, said, it's significant in this area because the economic activity goes even beyond the farm level. You've got so many other, so many other business sectors that depend on the success of the cotton industry.
Yeah, I had no idea about the paper bills. That's so cool that they were 75% cotton. Yeah, I was blown away. I come from a trading and merchandising background, and when I got into feed ingredient trading, learning about trading, cottonseed meal, and cottonseed hulls, I had no idea all these byproducts were coming from that process. So you got the lint for clothing and apparently money and all sorts of other things, and then the seed that gets crushed for oil, and then that creates byproducts too, which is cottonseed meal, cottonseed hulls is really, really interesting stuff. And then we used to trade a lot of whole cottonseed for dairy consumption. So it can either go to become oil or it can go straight to dairy cattle. So it really is dynamic. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the careers that are involved in the cotton industry? I know you mentioned it's not just the cotton that comes from the farm. There's this whole kind of post-harvest process. Maybe some career opportunities that are out there other than merchandising, like what I did?
Sure. Well, of course, as I said, you've got all the different processes. You can work in the ginning industry, whether if you like machinery and how things work and things of that nature, you might consider, and you have an interest in cotton, you might consider maybe looking at the gin management side. Of course, you've got associations like ours. There's lots of opportunities there. You've got us. You've got the National Cotton Council, which is our national organization handling policy, things of that nature. You've got Cotton Incorporated, which is our national checkoff program, and then the Cotton Board, which administers the activities of Cotton Incorporated. So, as far as other careers within the industry, as you mentioned, merchandising, you've got cotton merchants. So, somebody's got to be able to sell the cotton. So. You've got them. You can also go into the seed industry and all the inputs that producers have to use. Whether it's selling cotton seed, whether it's selling other inputs, that's an opportunity as well. And I know that's just the tip of the iceberg, and that's the neat thing about agriculture and the cotton industry as well, is that there are there are so many career opportunities, just kind of depending on what your interest is.
Very cool. And I know there's there's bales of cotton, and then there's like modules of cotton. After the lint is removed from the seed, do they generally turn that lint into jeans and other things here in Texas, or do they usually go somewhere else with that?
Well, 80% of our cotton is exported. So, we don't have much of a domestic textile industry here in the United States anymore. And I mean, that's unfortunate, but I mean, that's it. That's just how it is. So, but we do export obviously quite a bit of our cotton. It goes, goes to its destination. We've got, several good customers. Again, if I start naming them, I know I'm going to forget one, but, in the top 10, you've got China, Turkey, Mexico, Vietnam, several other countries that are doing things with our, spinning the cotton into yarn and then making the garments. And then those come back as finished goods here in the United States. Now, that being said, there seems to be a really interesting movement as of recently for people growing or making apparel from homegrown cotton. I can think of two just in the Lubbock area that are doing that, and so they're using locally grown, Texas grown cotton. They're having to go to a mill somewhere else in the United States, but they can say, well, this is Texas grown cotton. It's not spun in Texas, but still, it is all made in the USA. So there seems to be just a movement toward that. So I said, we'll just have to see how that goes. But I know that there's a demand for that, because I know that even before those two companies started, I fielded several questions from people who said, I want a t-shirt that's, for example, made of Texas cotton. Where can I find one? I was like, I don't know. Honestly, we didn't know. And so we're really fortunate now to have a couple of contacts in that regard. And like I said, two of the ones that I can think of are in Lubbock. There are others across the Cotton Belt. So we'll just have to see how that goes. But it is a challenge for the textile industry for a domestic textile industry to stay competitive in a world market, just like all other crops and things related to that. So, but yeah. So
I know, I love that though, because out of that, at a very traditional industry, you still have some entrepreneurial ventures popping up, finding those niche markets, and I think that's really, really cool. And one of the reasons that I love I love agriculture is there's always room for those niches, even in an industry as massive. I couldn't believe that you said in your area of Texas, there's like between 3 and 5% of the world's cotton produced. That is incredible to me. So before you were like the voice of Texas cotton, as I understand it, you got your kind of start in building your professional network in a very unconventional way. Can you tell us about that?
I did. It certainly is unconventional. Of course, I was in college and I wanted a job. And I remember looking in the newspaper and answering an ad for a newsroom clerk at the Lubbock Avalanche Journal. And I thought, well, this could work. I mean, I'd always enjoyed reading and writing. And so I thought, well, this is kind of right up my alley. And so and I remember the ad wasn't very specific about what all you would be doing. And so, I mean, of course, to me, it didn't matter. And so I went and applied. And little did I know that part of the job was going to be writing obituaries. And you know what, though? It was an incredible experience for several reasons. Number one, it taught me that, attention to detail is so important, because you have that one opportunity to sum up a person's life, and it better be right. And so you really have to watch all your details and, communicating with people, sometimes you're communicating with the family, sometimes it was with the funeral home. And so, it taught me a lot about working with people. And, so really I considered it a great honor, to be able to help put that information together, for those families. So to honor their loved ones. So it was unconventional, but it was a really, really, neat start, because as I stayed at the Avalanche Journal, I got an internship while I was there. And my advisor at the time told me, she said, well, you really need an internship, but you can't keep writing obituaries and doing what you're doing and call it an internship, which I also did court records and restaurant inspection reports and things like that. Just anything kind of clerical that needed to be put together for the paper. And but I approached my managing editor, and he said, we didn't have an ag reporter at the time at the AJ. And so he said, well, we'll let you write a few stories. And so long story short, that kind of morphed into other opportunities. And while I was at the AJ, I got involved with the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce. And so that was my next job, was at the Chamber. And then at both jobs, at the AJ and at the Chamber, that's where I first got introduced to the team at Plains Cotton Growers. And so, but I mean, if I hadn't answered that newspaper ad, if I hadn't, and also, from the obituaries too, I have a good friend who I was talking to a funeral home one day on the phone, and they said, our receptionist just left and we need to find somebody. And do you know anybody who has a job? Well, my roommate at the time needed a job, the same roommate that I transferred back from Oklahoma State with. And I said, yes, actually, I do know of somebody. Well, again, long story short, she has her license to be a funeral director and has worked in the industry as well. So again, it's just that those neat relationships that you never know where they're going to be connected. And so, being open to those opportunities, I think, is so important.
Oh, I think it's incredibly important. And a lot of folks at that juncture in their life where they're looking for their first job straight out of college are wondering, what's the right move, and they don't want to make a mistake. And my advice is just start down a path. And if it's the wrong path, that's okay. But you never know when doors like that are going to open up and where it's going to lead. But you will never know if you don't just start, just kind of heading down that direction.
Absolutely.
No, I think that's fantastic. What about you? When you talk to young people that want to enter the cotton industry, are there any kind of general qualities or traits that you think you really need to have to be successful?
I just always say learn as much as you can about the industry itself. Get to know some producers, follow the right organizations and people. There are so many fantastic growers on Facebook, on Twitter, who are sharing their stories. And so it's not absolutely necessary to have a background in the cotton industry. I mean, I did have a background in the cotton industry, but that certainly did not make me an expert. I'm still not an expert. I will never be an expert. I still call my dad every once in a while to say, okay, Dad, I don't want to, how do I, what is this? And, and he's still explaining things to me. So, so that's a tremendous blessing. But as far as, people wanting to get into the industry, I would just say, and I know you hear it all the time, but just networking, because you just never know where that connection is going to lead. But I just think it's important to be connected and to know as much as you can about the industry going in, because for me, that's impressive whenever somebody has already kind of done their homework. And I deal with the media a lot. That's part of my job. And I I have worked with reporters that I can tell knew absolutely nothing, about the industry coming in. Mm-hmm. By the time they were done, with their contract in Lubbock and they were moving on, somewhere else, which, I mean, these smaller markets are that's just what happens. It was so gratifying to see that they had taken the opportunity to learn and to take that knowledge somewhere else. So, but like I say, you just never know where those connections are going to lead.
There's something about cotton too. It seems like those people that just get really interested in cotton become just almost fanatical about the commodity. More so, you don't see that about corn or soybeans as much. But that's really interesting. And I don't know, maybe people love cotton because it's only grown in the warm area. So if you don't want to live in the very northern part of the Midwest, it's a great crop to pursue because it's only in the warmer climates, so to speak. But it just seems like there's something about cotton that people are become really fanatical about. Do you see that?
I think a lot of it is because it is a very tight-knit community, and there's, whenever you look at acreage compared to other crops, cotton is certainly not one of the big, one of the big acreage crops. And so I think that also keeps the industry, pretty tight knit. And then you also have all of the different segments within the cotton chain, the production, the merchandising, the advocacy, everything all the way through to the finished product. Everybody is networked. And I think that that also helps in keeping everybody, as I said, pretty close. Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that because, I mean, it is true. I mean, you can just always tell when somebody has a particular interest in the industry, and it's like you just immediately just connect on that. So I don't know. I mean, it is the fabric of our lives. So there's that.
Is that, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful crop. I mean, when it's about ready to be harvested, the fields are just beautiful. I used to live in South Central Kansas, and we had both cotton and sunflowers down there, and I think those are the two most beautiful crops when they're about ready to be harvested. Pretty cool. Now, can you point to one experience that you just thought okay, everything I do, it's kind of that makes it all worthwhile? Something that's happened to you where you just the feeling comes up this is exactly what I'm supposed to do with my life.
When I'm in the field with my camera, I kid you not. I mean, that is where I feel the most connected, and getting to talk to growers and getting to hear more about their operation and really getting to capture things with my camera. And I know that sounds, I mean, that's only one small part of everything that all communications directors do, and me too at PCG. But there's just something about, being in my truck, just me and my camera, just going out and driving around and talking to people, visiting maybe with some ginners and producers. And that when I have those moments, that's when I know that I'm doing exactly where I belong.
Great. Well, I want to ask you, we're running low on time, but I do want to ask you about this because several ag grads will graduate and get a job where they're going to be in a remote area where there probably is not an office to report to. So they do work from a home office. And I know you do. Can you give any advice about that? Do you think it's a good model? And who maybe would, what's it going to take to be successful in that environment?
Well, I'm still learning. I can tell you that. I actually had I had a few friends who had kind of set the precedent and that I've kind of relied on over this time just to get tips from. I can tell you that the best candidates for a working arrangement like this, you have to be a self-starter. You have to be able to be very organized, have your time, you've really got to manage your time well. And you have to be dedicated and devoted. I mean, because there are so many different things pulling you. And that's regardless of whether you're in the office or whether you're in a home office. But it seems like there's more temptations when you're at home with regard to, I could be doing this or that. I mean, it really takes a good amount of focus. But, the trade-offs, I mean, just the flexibility. And I think that, the arrangement between me and my boss is, get the work done. That's the main thing. And so I actually feel like for me, that on some days, I'm not saying this is across the board, but on some days I feel like I can get more accomplished being here at home, even than when I was at the office, because I can sit down, I can focus, especially whenever I'm working on a project like, say, designing our calendar, or we are fixing to redesign our website, thank goodness. And so I've been working on that too. And so I think that you have to be, you have to be able to manage your time well, you have to be organized, and you have to be devoted completely 100% to what you're doing.
Sure. I understand. No, I work from home as well. I tell everybody, like, this job from home is like the perfect job for an extroverted introvert, which I would consider myself, because you're by yourself in a room all day long. And then you're talking to people on the phone or on email or on social media. So it's like perfect. It's like controlled environment, social interaction. But no, I think that's great. Mary Jane, thank you so much for taking the time here. If there's people that are really interested in careers in cotton and would like to get in touch with you about your job or any contacts you might have in the industry, what's a good way for them to reach you?
You can email me, Mary Jane, MaryJane, just like the shoe or the candy, at plainscotton.org. And we also have, of course, our website at plainscotton.org. I'm on Twitter at MJ Buerkle. And so I, am glad to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Okay, so it's all one word, Mary Jane at plainscotton.org? That's
right.
Okay, I've got it up there on the screen then for those of you who are able to view the screen right now. And thank you so much. I appreciate this. I think it is a unique crop, a unique commodity, and one with a lot of opportunities. So thank you for being on the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.